In today's video, we're going to be learning about road rules in Australia. Some of the basic road rules that you need to know if you're coming from overseas. Also bear in mind, some of the road rules in Western Australia may differ a little bit from other states or territories. So this is just going to be a guide. If you need to make sure and verify all Western Australian road rules, please don't hesitate to double check with the Road Traffic Act of Western Australia. So the first thing we're going to start off is roundabouts. Roundabout rules you'll find Road Traffic Act 2000. It is in part 9 and it's from 91 to 99. Now almost all Western Australians get parts of this, one part or another, incorrect. Whether it be failing to indicate or indicating at the wrong time or not indicating when they're taking an exit. So we're going to start off with a left turn. So when we're starting from this point, we're driving in this direction, we're entering the roundabout. When you're turning left through a roundabout, you need to have your left indicator on before you hit the roundabout, and when you hit roughly past the little median strip, little triangular median strip, that's when you can turn your indicator off. So when you're turning left, you have left indicator. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, when you're heading straight from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock, that's a little bit different. So you enter the roundabout with no indicator on. You give way to your right, like you always do. And as you progress, when you pass the first triangular median strip, you are then required to place your left indicator on. And then you just continue and you exit. After you pass the triangular median strip, you can then turn your indicator off. So straight is left indicator. After the first exit. After first exit. So from this point, you pass the first triangular median strip, you place your left indicator on and you exit. Nice and straightforward, nice and simple, going straight. Turning right is a little bit different. So you want to go from this point to this point. So round the roundabout, right turn. The first thing you need to do is before you hit the roundabout, or at least before you hit the triangular median strip, you want to have your right indicator on. Then you slow down, you give way to your right, you then enter the roundabout with your right indicator on. When you pass the median strip, triangular median strip, as you're turning right, so it'll be on your left side, so this one here, from this point, you then place your left indicator on and you proceed out of your exit. So it's from this point, it's your right indicator until you hit this point here, and then it's your left indicator. So turning right is right indicator, this is your first step. Your second step is left indicator, after your last exit, before the one you're planning on taking. After last exit. Pretty straightforward so far, isn't it? Now, to go back the way you came, from this point all the way around to this point. So basically a U-turn. The first thing you want to do is, before you hit the median strip, triangular median strip, you want to have your right indicator on. You approach, you give way to your right, enter the roundabout, leaving your right indicator on. As you pass the last triangular median strip on your left hand side, before you exit, you want to put your left indicator on. So again, it's the same thing. So U for U-turn. So it'd be your right indicator. Then your left indicator after your last exit. It's basically exactly the same as your right turn. After your right last exit. Oh, my apologies. Last. After your last exit. Now, if it was just a three-way roundabout, the principle is exactly the same. If you're heading straight, it'd be straight ahead, your left indicator approximately halfway through the roundabout, and you go straight. If you're turning to the right, then you'd put a right indicator up upon your approach, right indicator, and then as you just pass the last median strip on your left hand side prior to your exit, you put your left indicator on and you exit. And of course, U-turn, right indicator as you approach, you perform your U-turn, and when you get to this point here, put your left indicator on and exit. Almost all Western Australians don't understand the indicating process on a roundabout, whether it be from ignorance or whether it be probably from laziness. But generally, that is how you use a roundabout. And again, as I said, all parts of your indicating process appear in your Road Traffic Act of 2000, and it's regulation 91 through to 99. Failing to indicate left when you're exiting a roundabout is an offence under regulation 99 of the Road Traffic Act. So please bear that in mind. Drink driving is another one. Now, drink driving. Western Australia, the limit for alcohol in your system is 0.05% alcohol. 0.05. There are other restrictions. For example, certain P-platers need to be 0.02% alcohol in their system. And then there's certain P-platers and L-platers that have to be 0.00. So if you get checked for a random breath test from the local police, you need to be under 0.05 for a full license. If you're a provisional driver and you've got the alcohol restriction, you need to be 0.02. And if you're a learner, you need to be 0. Now, keeping under those levels sometimes is difficult because we all enjoy a drink every now and then. Western Australian guidelines says to stay under 0.05, 0.05% alcohol, to stay under. Then it is recommended that if you are male, 2 drinks for the first hour, and then 1 drink every hour after that. So every hour after. 2 drinks in the first hour, 1 drink every hour after that. A standard drink, not like the old beers, the old Iron Jack. This is 1.2 standard drinks in this can. That is not 1 standard drink. So you can have one of those cans and 60% of another one, and there's your 2 drinks gone. And then it's 1 can every hour after that. That's for males. For females, it's similar, but for females, to stay under 0.05, it's 1 drink every hour. Only 1. 1 drink every hour. 2 drinks for the first hour for a male, 1 drink every hour after, or less. Females, 1 drink every hour, or less. Theoretically, that will keep you under 0.05. The safest thing to do is to not drink drive. But people do that. That's okay. I think we've all done it at one time or another. However, having said that, there are penalties. The first increment for a full license is between 0.05% alcohol and 0.08% alcohol. That's your first increment. You know you're in trouble then. The second one is between 0.08% and 0.12% alcohol. That charge right there is called excess 0.08%. That is what the term is. If you are over 0.08 with your alcohol level, then you are charged with excess 0.08. Doesn't matter if you've attempted to drive, or you're caught driving, or you're stopped driving. It's always the same. Then you have over 0.12% alcohol. That is DUI in Western Australia, driving under the influence of alcohol. In some places they will say that's low range drink driving, mid range drink driving, high range drink driving. In WA, it's drink driving, excess 08 drink driving, and then your DUI. The penalties, as you get higher, are obviously worse. I'm not going to discuss what the penalties are at this stage. And the reason for that is because they are constantly changing. So, there is your drink driving. Safest thing to do, if you're going to go out and have a drink, don't drive. Take an Uber, take a cab, whatever. Now, overtaking vehicles is something that is quite dangerous at times on Western Australian roads. Now, there's a few markings on the road that will tell you when you can overtake and when you can't. Unbroken line, like so. That means if you're here and you're travelling in this direction and there's a car here, you can pass them by going onto the wrong side of the road and simply overtaking. You need to make sure there's nothing oncoming. You need to make sure it's all clear, your visibility is good, and you need to make sure the vehicle that you're overtaking is not speeding up or doing something silly on the roads. Self-explanatory. Then we have the double line. If you're here and the vehicle's here, you can't shoot over. Big no-no. Can't overtake. If it is broken on your side, and whole on the other, and the vehicle that you're overtaking, you can still overtake. You are allowed to do that. No problem. Because the broken line is on your side. The people on the opposite side are not allowed to. Always make sure you have full line of sight when you are overtaking. Now, another problem is a bend. So if you've got dotted lines on a bend, you will never, ever, ever see that, because if you're here, there's a bend, you cannot see this area here. You will never see that, ever. What you could see is a broken line and then the overtaking lines. The reason for it is because if you're coming the other direction, you're traveling in this direction, you can see what is in this area here. So therefore you can overtake. Again, all overtaking is a risk. You can do it, but you need to be careful. Now, drug driving. They can test you for drug driving. Now, obviously, problem drugs use cannabis, heroin, cocaine, meth, as they say, and prescription drugs. They are not the only ones that they test for, but they're the main ones, because Western Australia, we have a cannabis, heroin, cocaine and a meth problem. It's not extensive. It's not like some other places in the country. It's not like some other places in the world. But they are the problems that we have. Now, cannabis, heroin, cocaine, and meth. These ones are all illegal. They are all illegal in Western Australia. Obviously, prescription drugs are not illegal. But you need to go and see a doctor. You have to have correct scripts for it, testing for it. It has to be a diagnosis involved where your doctor has said you can have a certain type of drug. However, I don't like the term drug for this. I like the term medication. Medication. Prescription medication. Much better. However, you need to check with your doctor prior to driving if you're on something that's going to give you a reading that makes it deemed that you're drug driving. You also don't want to have a prescription medication in your vehicle that is not in the packet that has your name on it, because that is also a separate offence. That's an offence under the Misuse of Drugs Act. I'll get into that a little later. But for the most part, if you've got any illegal substance in your system, not limited to these four, and including your prescription medication, do not drive. We have public transport in Western Australia. It is quite effective. We have the trains, we have the ferry, we have the bus services. There is also options like Ola, Uber, Didi, Swan taxis, Western Australian cabs. There's a lot of options. Get a lift with a mate, get a lift with a friend, get a family member to pick you up. But don't get caught with drug driving or with drink driving. Because if you're over here on a holiday, it's going to ruin your holiday. If you're over here as a permanent resident, or even as a citizen in Western Australia, if you get caught drink driving or drug driving, it's going to ruin a lot of things. Believe me, I know. Lane changing. Lane changing is pretty self-explanatory too. If you are in two lanes, so here's one lane here. There's cars, car, whatever. And there is another lane here. Car, whatever, you get the idea. You're free to travel back and forth between lanes. You can travel back and forth as much as you like. You need to put your indicator on. Wait for this area to be clear. He's gone forward, obviously. When that area is clear and he's moved forward, you can change lanes. Bear in mind, just because you put your indicator on does not give you the right to just change lanes. You still need to check your blind spot. You still need to make sure there's no vehicles coming. And even if a person puts their indicator on, they still need to wait. They don't automatically get priority because their indicator is on. Now sometimes you'll see an off-ramp from a highway. So you've got your unbroken line on the side of the highway. Here's your off-ramp here. So that's your off ramp there. And then you'll have what looks like this. And then continuing straight, you have your lane. One lane, maybe two. Maybe two. Not always two, sometimes just one. Prior to this line being unbroken, this line here, prior to that being unbroken, the line should look like this. If a vehicle gets to this point and they're traveling happily along and there's a vehicle here or whatever here, anyway. If they get to this point where the line is unbroken, they have to stay in that lane. They are not allowed to change lanes. Big no. Can't do it. If you hit that line, long line, short dot, once you hit that point, you cannot change lanes. These vehicles can change lanes freely between the two lanes as long as there's a free area. But that is what this means. 90% of Western Australians don't understand that. Whether it be from ignorance or just from not learning the road rules properly. But long line, small dot. Long line, small dot means if you are in that lane, you remain in that lane until you come off the highway or freeway. Now the baby on board sign. You may have seen that. A lot of people have it on their rear windscreens. The old baby on board sign. Now if you don't have a baby in your vehicle and you've got the little sign that says baby on board, take it down. People don't realise the baby on board sign is not to tell other drivers that there's a baby on board. It's designed to tell emergency services, if you're involved in an accident, that there's a baby inside that vehicle. Fire services, police services, whatever it is, ambulance. It's designed to notify them that there's a baby inside that vehicle if it's involved in some type of accident or incident. If you don't have a baby in your car and you've got one of those signs up, take it out. Don't have that sign in your vehicle. Because if you have an accident and they see the baby on board sign, their priority is making sure that there's a driver and there's a baby and everybody's welfare is not in jeopardy. Don't leave the baby on board signs up. I see parents all the time driving in the schools and stuff. They drop their kids off and whatever. They don't take the signs down. Take the sign off if you're driving with no kid in the car. Especially a baby. No baby in the car, take the sign down. Seat belts. 100%. It is compulsory to wear a seat belt in Western Australia. Small exemptions. Very small exemptions. If you've been arrested and you're in the back of a police vehicle. You don't have to have a seatbelt on. In the back of an ambulance. You don't have to have a seatbelt on. A medical condition. but it has to be recognised from the Department of Transport. And of course, over the age restriction. I won't disclose what the age is, as it keeps changing. So if you're over the age restriction, then you don't have to wear a seatbelt. The other reason for not wearing a seatbelt is if you're pushing your car. You're pushing your car either to start it or to move it. You don't need a seatbelt for that. A controversial one, where there's a lot of arguments, I don't recommend doing it, is if your vehicle is travelling in reverse. Then you don't need to wear a seatbelt. I personally think that if there's any time that you're in your vehicle, you should be wearing a seatbelt. Seatbelts save lives. It's proven in WA. Seatbelts save lives. Wear a seatbelt. Takes you less than a second to pull it down and go click, click. Wear seatbelts. Encourage the kids to wear seatbelts. But wear seatbelts. So that's just a summarised version of the main road rules in Western Australia when you're driving on the Australian roads, especially in WA. I hope this video's been helpful for you. I hope it gives you some quick tips and tricks to keep you safe on the West Australian roads.